Watch right now on the Front News project. Crimea, powerful strikes. The Ukrainian armed forces are on the offensive. Putin's soldiers are being eliminated at full speed. Meanwhile, the genocide continues. Hellish shelling of Kyiv and Kharkiv. Kindergartens are burning. Also, the elimination of Russian officers. Exclusive footage from the Kremlin. Panic. Fiery, intense, and blazing. Watch frontline footage right now.
Greetings, this is Sergei Malnev with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Ukraine is actively preparing the Crimean Peninsula where the occupation is. Even diesel fuel has already disappeared from gas stations, and successful attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces on Russian military radars are making it possible to further destroy both the occupiers' fuel and military infrastructure. Next, let's see what awaits the occupiers on the seized peninsula in the near future.
A difficult, prolonged, and exhausting journey lies ahead for all involved. Crimea and Sevastopol are finally returning to their true home harbor, where they belong, and
that harbor is Ukraine. Crimea is being cut off from the Russian Federation, and the collapse of the Crimean bridge is just a matter of time, according to Western publications. There is already a total fuel crisis on the peninsula. Some areas have been left without electricity. There isn't enough air defense even for the most important sites, and those that remain in the confusion are already shooting down their own aircraft.
We note that as a military base, Crimea is becoming more and more inconvenient for Russia, and also because there is no water.
So the past few days have marked a new reality of life on the peninsula. The key event was a series of strikes in the area of Vardiske. After precise hits, the largest oil depot in the area caught fire. According to locals, the burning depot in Vardiske could be seen from the suburbs of Simferopol, with the glow visible for many kilometers. In
Vardiske, there was a strike not only on the oil depot, but also on the military airfield, as well as on the Russian garrison located there.
According to information online, it is reported that an ammunition depot on the garrison's territory was also hit. In addition, the oil depot near Feodosia has also partially ceased operations due to several attacks. Just this month, 11 fuel tanks were completely destroyed, as confirmed by satellite images.
There's a very important story about the Feodosia oil depot. What is it? That it didn't just burn down on its own. It burned down along with the fuel that was stored in those tanks. And that will be very difficult to restore. It's unclear what was stored there, diesel fuel or gasoline. But if it was gasoline, which is most likely, it means that the crisis this week in occupied Crimea will be much worse than it was the week before. So, we wait.
At the same time, each such strike is notable for the fact that it's almost impossible to extinguish the fire. Experts say that the burning fuel spreads across the facility, igniting neighboring tanks. As a result, the fire can last for days.
The landscapes of Feodosia, they practically adorn everything. They say that in the entire eastern part of Crimea, the flames can be seen from 30, and in some places even 50 kilometers away. Everything is burning out, they say. The facility needs to be shut down. This is a recommendation for the occupying Crimean authorities, who have also confirmed that there will be no gasoline.
There will be no diesel either, local authorities add. So, since the beginning of the week, diesel fuel has also disappeared in Crimea, local activists report. With things as they are, the promise by the occupation head of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, to stabilize the fuel supply situation is simply impossible to fulfill, added Z propagandist Alexander Sergeyev. At the same time, the authorities are desperately trying to hide the real picture of what is happening in Crimea. So, just over the past weekend, police officers drew up at least 4 administrative reports against residents of the peninsula. This was due to posts on social media. People in particular were outraged by the lack of fuel. Interestingly, Russians themselves are partly helping the Ukrainian armed forces to identify targets in Crimea. Experts have analyzed that now you can simply find them by opening maps on the internet.
remember when Yandex.Maps started blurring all sorts of strategic sites? I said that now it's absolutely clear where exactly to strike. So my friends, Friends from Inform Napalm noticed that the Special Operations Forces did exactly that. The territory of the oil depot in Khabardiska was blurred on Yandex, but for some reason that didn't help against the strikes. Mystical. Once again, thanks to all the Russian decisions that help increase the effectiveness of Ukrainian strikes. Blurring military sites on Yandex maps is definitely one of them.
Another decision that contributes to the regular strikes in Crimea is the work of the defense forces targeting Russian air defense sites on the peninsula. So the day before, the GUR managed to strike the occupiers' newest radar system. We're talking about the Valday complex, which was developed to detect small drones.
The SBU continues to systematically reduce the enemy's military, logistical, and economic capabilities, to take action both in occupied Crimea, in other occupied territories, and even on Russian territory itself. But Crimea suffers the most because the air defense system there was deliberately destroyed, reducing their ability to defend themselves. And now we're working as if inside the body. But
By the way, so that the occupiers in Crimea don't get the impression that everything will go back to normal, along with oil depots and military equipment, the AFU hasn't forgotten about the equipment that supplies electricity to Russian bases. In several regions of the peninsula, Ukrainian defenders organized blackouts. In
Crimea, several electrical substations were disabled overnight, and in particular the main power substation in Jankoy, or Jankong as we used to call it in Crimea. So now rolling power outage schedules are being introduced, and here once again Putin is being shown in very concrete terms that if he continues to strike at Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the occupiers in Crimea will be left without electricity and fuel.
And now the cherry on top. During one of the latest attacks, the Russian air defense crews got so nervous that they started firing at everything in sight. As a result, one less Russian fighter jet worth about $50 million.
During a nighttime attack by Ukrainian drones, Russian forces shot down their own Su-30 SM aircraft. This happened right in the area of the Khabardiska airfield.
At the same time, there's no good news for the occupiers when it comes to air defense. Analysts note that recently there have been more strikes on Russian territory, prompting the decision to partially redeploy air defense systems from Crimea back to Russia for protection. And
Here's another major piece of news. Ukrainian defenders have eliminated more than 50 Russian officers from the elite Senej and Kubinka units, as well as representatives of the main Directorate of Russian Intelligence and Special Operations Forces. This is a major loss and a blow to enemy forces, as they managed to destroy top-level specialists whose training takes many years. Details in our next report.
More than 3,000 kilometers. That is the current length of the front line between Ukraine and Russia. Of that, nearly 1,000 kilometers are active combat zones. Hundreds of kilometers where Ukrainian defenders break the backbone of an army that was once called the second strongest in the world every day. And every meter of this line is a story of courage, loss, and unbreakable will. At this front line, not only columns of equipment and infantry are being destroyed, but also Russia's military elite. During the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian fighters have eliminated dozens of special forces soldiers from elite units. Senej and Kubinka, those whom even in Russia itself are called the elite of the elite.
Losses of such fighters are especially painful for Russia. Each of them is not an ordinary soldier, but a specialist who has undergone years of training. Training a single such officer takes years and requires significant resources, as noted by I Want to Live.
Recently, a documentary was released to the public about the elimination of a sabotage and reconnaissance group from the Senej Special Purpose Center, which was operating in the Chernihiv region. This operation became one of the most effective since the start of the full-scale war. Ukrainian intelligence officers from the 54th Separate Reconnaissance Battalion, together with border guards from the 105th Prince Volodymyr the Great Detachment, eliminated 6 enemy officers. The bodies of those neutralized as well as weapons and equipment were captured.
Everything that works, they enter Ukrainian territory with their GoPro cameras turned on, and they record all their actions. If you can even call it work. Murder, sabotage, it's essentially terrorism. And they are the first to show this to their, perhaps, commanders or superiors. To report back. That's the first reason. And secondly, they post all of this online to intimidate people. There are videos titled, "How I Spent This Summer." And in these videos, there are straight-up montages. of the killing of Ukrainians, both soldiers and civilians.
At the center of Sinish and Kubinka are the key units of the Russian Special Operations Forces, reporting directly to the General Staff. It's from there that they select the best of the best. Those who are supposed to carry out the most difficult, covert and dangerous missions. They are trained using Western methods and deployed in operations outside the country, from Ukraine to Africa. But in Ukraine, even such an elite force proved powerless. Those whom Moscow calls invisible fighters become visible on Ukrainian fields. According to the I Want to Live project, during the war, Ukraine has eliminated at least 58 operatives from the Russian Special Operations Forces of the GRU and FSB. For the enemy's army, these are not just losses, it's a blow to the core personnel, to those who were supposed to conduct reconnaissance, coordinate operations, and prepare new acts of sabotage. And while Russian propaganda continues to talk about precision weaponry and the professionalism of its army, the reality is completely different. Across more than 3,000 kilometers of front line, Ukraine is not only holding the line but is also methodically eliminating those whom the Kremlin considers untouchable. And no matter how long Russia continues this aggression, the defense forces will keep giving the same answer. No invader will remain alive on Ukrainian soil.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the blazing Pokrovsk front. It's always extremely intense here. Over the course of the day, the enemy attempted to advance on our positions 16 times in the Pokrovsk direction, near the settlements of Nikonorivka, Mionohrad, Rodinska, Lisivka, Zverevo, Udakhna and Molodetska, and in the direction of other settlements as well. 2 combat clashes are still ongoing, and here is yet another terrifying chapter of this war, written by Putin's Russia. On the night of October 22nd, Russian forces launched a massive attack on Ukraine with ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as strike drones. Targets included in particular Kyiv, Zaporizhzhia, Odessa, Poltava and Dnipropetrovsk regions. 2 residents of the capital were killed. They were a married couple. At the time of the Russian attack, the man and woman were at home. Their apartment in the Dnipro district was completely burned out. TSN correspondent Irina Kadrachuk was on the scene of the tragedy.
The man was 69 years old, his wife was 67. The couple died as a result of a direct hit by a Russian Shahed drone. This was reported to us by the Dnipro District State Administration. It is known that they had a daughter and 2 grandchildren who loved spending the night at their grandparents' place. But fortunately, on that night, there were no children in the apartment that burned down completely. Neighbors shared with us the horror that those who stayed in the building had to endure.
There were constant explosions overhead. We didn't even know that it had hit the building until we saw it. But like I said, it was literally a matter of seconds. As soon as the explosion happened, we jumped up and ran to the kitchen. There was already smoke everywhere. You couldn't see the windows. Everything was completely filled with smoke.
Enemy shrapnel is lying right in front of the entrance to this building. That's why the residents who were evacuated at dawn still can't return to their homes. After all, forensic experts are working at the scene, and bomb disposal specialists are also inspecting it. Tatiana Kornienko, a resident of the 5th floor. Her apartment is directly below the one that took the brunt of the impact. And today, her family is celebrating their 2nd birthday, because they managed to evacuate in time.
We were at home with the children. The children were in the hallway since 1 in the morning when the ballistic attack happened. Then we heard explosions and there were a lot of sparks. All the glass was blown out, and in just 3 or 4 minutes we rushed downstairs. We saw that the apartment above us on the 6th floor was on fire and we were right below them on the 5th. What's in the apartment? Well, probably everything is flooded and there are no windows.
In total, in the Dnipro district, impacts were recorded at 7 locations. Not only apartment buildings were affected, but also medical and social institutions. For the most part, the windows were damaged. In this apartment building, 6 apartments were damaged, and at least 28 people have sought help. The rest are waiting until they can return home.
And now let's analyze the current situation on the Kupiansk front. Here the enemy. During the day, they tried 3 times to advance on our positions. in the areas of Piszczanowe, Stepne, Novoselivka, and Petropavlivka. The defense forces successfully repelled one attack, and 2 more clashes are still ongoing. And here is Putin-style genocide in all its glory. Russian occupiers struck a building in the center of Kharkiv with 3 Shahed drones, and on the first floor of that building was a private kindergarten. Fortunately, the teachers managed to get the children into the shelter in time. None of the children were harmed. Journalist Yulia Boyko from KTSN will tell and show you more.
In broad daylight, the Russians attacked the center of Kharkiv. 3 attack UAVs, one after another, deliberately hit a private kindergarten where up to 50 children were present at that moment. Preschoolers. The children were taken to the shelter in time. They were not harmed. However, there are wounded among the adults. These are the first minutes after the strike. Terrifying footage shows frightened little children being carried out of the burning kindergarten. The footage of the rescue was released by the State Emergency Service and the police. At the time of the attack, there were 48 preschool-aged children in the facility.
When we went down to the basement, it was filled with thick smoke. Both rescuers and police had to make their way through it, get the children, carry them outside, and evacuate them. They were in a state of shock. They were crying. Everyone carried the children out to the ambulances in their arms.
Russian Shaheds attacked Kharkiv at around 11 a.m., eyewitnesses say. Explosions went off one after another. Debris was scattered for dozens of meters. We were at the conference earlier today. The glass shattered and the first explosion went off. Then I decided to go out and check on the car. As soon as I stepped outside, there was a second strike. I got hit a bit by the glass, but it was nothing serious. A 40-year-old street cleaner who was cleaning the street next to the kindergarten was fatally wounded. His fellow municipal workers who were on shift were also injured, as well as a woman who was sitting in a parked car at the moment of the strike. All the wounded were hospitalized.
Number 2, please. Of them are in extremely serious condition, and according to our information, there is more. 1 person sought medical assistance.
Russian drones damaged shops, offices, and business premises on 2 streets. Several cars burned, the windows in a municipal vehicle were blown out, and the overhead contact line was severed. In the building where a kindergarten operated, the roof collapsed and several rooms were burned out.
The destruction is quite severe. The second floor is destroyed, the floor slabs, and parts of the first floor premises are also damaged. There are a total of 3 fire sources there. It was specifically the building of the children's educational institution that was burning, covering an area of 500 square meters.
According to preliminary data, law enforcement in Kharkiv reported that the drones attacked were of the Gerin type with jet engines. At the moment, investigators are collecting debris to determine the drone modifications and their flight path. They will also check the activities of the kindergarten and whether all safety measures were followed there.
Now let's analyze the current situation in the Konstantinovka direction. Bloody battles continue. Here the invaders tried 8 times to advance on the positions of our units. Near Shkerbinovka, Rusinoyar, Katerinovka, and Sofievka. The defense forces successfully stopped all attempts by the invaders. Ukraine will receive Belgian F-16 fighter jets and is purchasing Viper attack helicopters. Right now, we'll tell you about the new additions to the fleet defending Ukraine's skies.
One of the largest and most popular Russian Telegram channels, 2 majors with an audience of over 1 million subscribers, repost the news about Ukraine purchasing combat and transport helicopters.
We're talking about the Viper and Venom. The manufacturer, Bell Textron, announced the signing of letters of intent to develop cooperation with Ukraine. An agreement was signed to assess approaches to industrial cooperation as part of a potential purchase of AH-1 Zulu and UH-1 Yankee helicopters. The Venom is a transport helicopter, while the Viper is an attack helicopter, which carries Hellfire missiles. Both of them can use 70mm rockets, which basically means APK. And the Venom can be equipped with a minigun and recalling. Based on American exercises, Ukraine could use these helicopters to shoot down drones like the Garan.
The interest of Russian media in the purchase of such helicopters indicates that the Kremlin understands that with the appearance of these birds in Ukrainian skies, the air defense system will become much more effective in countering Shahed strike drones. Bell attack helicopters are being purchased to replace the outdated Mi-24 and Mi-8, which have long since outlived their service life. 85% of the parts in the Viper and Venom are identical, which means cheaper and simpler maintenance. The Viper was created during the Vietnam War back in 1965, and by the 2000s it received new engines and a rotor, upgraded avionics, a fire control system, comprehensive survivability improvements, as well as extensive digitalization. In terms of capabilities, the Viper is almost on par with the best attack helicopter in the world, the Apache.
The Apache is objectively more powerful since this machine has a maximum takeoff weight of 10.4 tons compared to 8.4 tons. The combat radius of the Apache is 300 kilometers, while the Viper's is 243 kilometers. Also, the Apache's main armament is more extensive, up to 16 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles versus 8 on the Viper. But the typical combat load on the Apache is quite similar. The Viper carries 8 Hellfire missiles and 2 pods of 70mm unguided Hydra rockets. As for automatic cannons, it's 30mm versus 20mm.
An agreement has already been signed to assess approaches to industrial cooperation as part of the procurement of Viper and Venom helicopters.
We are proud to announce this agreement and the possibility of delivering these incredible helicopters to Ukraine. This initiative has been in development for some time and we look forward to its completion. Jeffrey Schlosser, Senior Vice President of Bell.
In addition to the procurement of transport and attack helicopters, Ukraine will soon receive another batch of F-16 fighter jets. The Belgian Minister of Defense stated that as early as the beginning of 2026, the new birds will enter service with Ukraine, right after Belgium receives its new F-35s.
We continue to receive deliveries according to schedule. The first 3 F-35s, not 4, have already arrived. Now they need to become operational. I think this will take a year or a year and a half. Once we achieve operational capability, we will be able to transfer our F-16S to Ukraine. This is a very important phase. I always explain this to the Ukrainians. As soon as we are able, we will transfer them. But don't forget that our country has DCA capabilities and plays an important role in NATO's nuclear deterrence policy. This is the cornerstone of our doctrine.
This year, Ukraine received 2 F-16s from Belgium for spare parts. And according to the security agreement between Ukraine and Belgium, the latter must deliver 30 F-16 fighter jets by 2028. As of June 2025, Ukraine has already received more than 40 F-16s from its allies.
And now let's move to the southern Slobozhansky direction of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill and maim here as well. There have been 5 combat clashes in the southern Slobozhansky direction. The enemy attacked the areas of the settlements of Vovchansk, Kamenka, as well as in the direction of Balagovka. 3 combat engagements are still ongoing. Ukraine is a leader in global weapons production. First and foremost, this refers to drones, both aerial and maritime. What new and effective technologies are rolling off the assembly lines of Ukrainian defense enterprises? And how is this changing the course of the war in Ukraine's favor? We'll show you now.
The Ukrainian defense industry is gaining momentum. Ukraine is becoming a global leader in weapons production.
Europe must help Ukraine become a steel porcupine that no aggressor can overcome.
The security service of Ukraine has demonstrated new Sea Baby maritime drones, which have already been tested in combat. The upgraded drones are capable of traveling more than 1,500 kilometers and carrying up to 2 tons of cargo. 2 versions have been presented. One is equipped with a machine gun mount and an automatic target recognition and tracking system. The second is the Grad maritime platform with a 10-round multiple launch rocket system.
Our drones have changed the balance of power in the Black Sea and have proven their effectiveness. The new generation of Sea Baby is even more effective. Therefore, the work to clear the Black Sea of the Russian fleet will continue in the future.
In addition, the upgraded drones are equipped with reinforced engines and a modern navigation system. Earlier, in June 2025, new models of maritime drones were used during the attack on the Crimean bridge.
We approached by land, we approached across the water surface, and in 2025, we went in underwater. There were 2 strikes, each with a power equivalent to 1.1 tons of TNT. As a result, there was serious damage. Its key supports the so-called piers. Essentially, the bridge now operates with a load limit of no more than 5 tons, with trucks moving across it. The enemy is not conducting any military logistics there.
Ukraine's allies are in no hurry when it comes to supplying long-range missiles that the armed forces of Ukraine could use to destroy legitimate military targets of the occupiers, deep in the Russian rear.
The story in the Wall Street Journal claiming that the US allegedly approved the use of Ukrainian long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. Fake news. The US has nothing to do with these missiles.
Kyiv, for its part, has focused on producing a wide range of its own long-range missiles and drones, which are regularly used to strike Russian territory. As of today, Ukraine produces dozens of long-range missiles each month, such as the long-range Neptune and Fomin missiles, as well as thousands of long-range and rocket-powered drones.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, it is necessary not only to learn how to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and aviation. That's why these capabilities were needed, and I'm not even mentioning the necessity of striking enterprises of Russia's military-industrial complex and its energy system.
Weapons manufacturers have not forgotten about the Ukrainian goddess of war, Bodana, either. This year, Ukraine became the world leader in the production of self-propelled artillery systems.
Artillery remains the queen, and Ukraine has mastered the production of howitzers.
Despite the role of FPV drones on the front line, artillery has several advantages over unmanned aerial vehicles. First of all, its range of fire. For the Bodana, this figure is 45 kilometers. The shells are inexpensive, immune to radio jamming, and extremely effective against enemy infantry.
The warhead. In other words, these are completely different capabilities for striking both personnel and accordingly equipment and command posts, permanent temporary locations of the enemy. If a FPV drone targets a single objective, meaning a specific serviceman of the occupying army, then accordingly, the Bodana self-propelled artillery system is designed to strike area targets. In other words, this is what holds back the so-called local assaults by Russian occupiers.
A protracted war and defense in such a war require quick and effective solutions from Ukrainian military engineers. While Russian occupiers continue to dream of demilitarization, Ukraine is gradually becoming the world's largest arms forge.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News. New, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so that you know the truth. This was Serhiy Malnev with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.